Joining me now is Institute of Public Affairs Deputy Executive Director Daniel Wild. Daniel, it's deja vu all over again. Another group of asylum seekers arriving by boat. The coalition claim people smugglers are testing Labor's weak border protection policies. Is that what's happening here? Is this just bad luck that when Labor are in power, this becomes an issue?
Well, I think it's more than just bad luck, Rita, unfortunately. And as you say, it's deja vu all over again. And look, we'll wait and see what the response of the government and the Prime Minister is to this. But it's certainly worrying signs that we could see the dramatic deterioration of our national sovereignty that took place under the previous Labor government happening again. I think this gets to a much bigger issue, which is it's not just about the unlawful boat arrivals, but it's taking place within the context of a record migration program. We released research yesterday showing that last year was the first year in our nation's history that more than 1 million migrants entered our nation. And this is taking place within the context of extreme shortages in housing and schools and roads and hospitals and other critical infrastructure. So it's not just the unlawful boat arrivals or the detention issue. There's a much bigger migration challenge that this nation faces.
Well, do we pay too much attention to the illegal arrivals and not enough to the legal arrivals and their numbers? Because this is a country that has always had welcomed migrants as long as they come here lawfully. But the numbers you're talking about we haven't seen that before. And can we cope? Do we have the infrastructure, the housing, the roads, the hospitals, the schools to deal with that sort of influx?
No, you're spot on. There is a tendency, and I think understandably, for the media to focus on the unlawful arrivals. But you're quite right. The numbers we're seeing now are unprecedented. Don't forget that this government has also committed to a 1.7 million migrant intake over the next 5 years. Now, that's the equivalent to the entire population of South Australia with no planning for how these migrants are going to be accommodated. Now, you're quite right to say that we are a welcoming and tolerant nation, and of course, migrants have done and will continue to play a very important role to our economic and social fabric, but Australians quite rightly expect that there's proper planning that is in place, and that simply hasn't happened.
No, this seems to be a band-aid solution to some of our economic woes where we just create economic activity and pretend everyone's better off when, frankly, we are not. Now, let's go to Queensland. And there's polling there that shows the majority of Queenslanders think the government is far too soft on crime, with residents feeling unsafe in their own homes. Let's have a look at some of this data. 66% of those polls say the government is too soft on crime. And we've got 56% of regional Queenslanders saying they don't feel safe in their own homes. That's more than those living in southeast Queensland, but that number itself is worrying, with 41% of those residents saying they don't feel safe. This is a huge issue. Obviously, cost of living is right up there, but crime, youth crime, the soft response to crime we're seeing, it may shape the election.
I think it could do, and it's a real interesting one. I mean, if you look at the youth detention centres in Queensland, they're at almost capacity, 98% utilisation, and I think there's plans to spend something like in the tens of millions of dollars to build another detention facility, all at the cost of taxpayers. So this can't go on as it is. I think there's been some sensible proposals being put out there by the Katter Party, saying, look, we've got to get some of these troubled youths into work opportunities in regional Queensland. This has been a successful model used, particularly in the United States, which has been successful in reducing crime, reducing recidivism. So those kind of, I think, innovative approaches to reducing crime are important. We also have to remember that the whole criminal justice system is fundamentally broken, where we're incarcerating the wrong people. There's a lot of non-violent offenders who are in jails. Now, they shouldn't be in jail because they're not a risk to the safety of the community. They should be punished, but jail isn't the right spot for them. But we've got violent and dangerous criminals who are on the street. So governments need to prioritise incarcerating the right people, but not those who aren't a risk to our safety.
Now, just when we thought the ABC couldn't waste any more of our money, the Australian reports the national broadcaster has begun recruiting cultural advisors as part of its latest move to help staff, including journalists, to deal appropriately with culturally sensitive stories. I can just imagine the type of ideologues, Daniel, that they're hiring at the ABC. Are they not ideological enough that they need to add more of this into the institution.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is great reporting by Sophie Ellsworth. She's done a great job on the ABC over the years. And I think it just gives the game away. This would surprise absolutely no one, that they're just basically formalising their ideological approach to how they go about their news coverage. But look, this is a really big issue. The ABC is a taxpayer-funded organisation. They therefore should represent the views of the entire Australian community that is required to fund them. But of course, the ABC is interested in every single kind of diversity other than diversity of opinion or of values or beliefs. And all you have to do is look at the Voice to Parliament coverage, look at how they cover key issues like climate change or COVID and so forth. This is just another example of their lurch down this ideological path.
And the Australian, I think, did a very good job today in showing the hypocrisy, the double standards they've also displayed on the issue of parliamentarians and their behaviour. Look at how they treated Lydia Thorpe's outburst outside a Melbourne strip club compared to how they covered the Barnaby Joyce thing, which is a crisis apparently, and there needs to be all sorts of ramifications. They have barely even touched Lydia Thorpe's issues, and frankly, Lydia Thorpe's behaviour was far worse than what we saw from Barnaby Joyce. You could argue he's older and he should know better, but Lydia Thorpe is no child, and she was not only swearing, making what seemed like threats outside of that strip club and behaving in a very reckless or erratic, you might say, manner, compared to what Barnaby Joyce did. And yet they're still even bringing up issues like white male privilege when, quite frankly, it was the Indigenous woman who got the far better treatment in that case.
Yeah, that's a very good example. And I think it gets to something broader with the ABC, which is no one's saying they can't report on the issues that they want to report on or they're not entitled to freedom of speech. What Australians are saying is you've got to be balanced. You've just identified one important example where clearly they're not balanced, but we could go through the major policy issues facing our nation's future. There are simply no meaningful centre-right voices on the ABC when it comes to news coverage or opinion, and that is why trust in the ABC is declining, and that is why ratings of their marquee programs continue to plummet.
Well, they are receiving more than $1 billion per annum. They have a charter. Because they're publicly funded, they have to be impartial and balanced, and they're not. They defy that charter every day. And frankly, the coalition who were in power for consecutive terms did nothing to curtail that. And of course, Labor aren't going to do anything about it.